so that we can address to all those questions they have, right?
Sure.
So yeah, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear
Oh,
you.
all right. So further is that come into the picture are knowledge inadequacy, market risk, cultural risk, buyers acceptance risk, documentation risk. As we have discussed, that it's very important that you should have a knowledge about various things when you are entering a foreign land. It could be about buyers background, about the country, how they have been in trade for how long years, do they have any treaty with your country, is there any benefit they are offering to your country. A very short example of that came across to me recently, I would like to share here. I have a customer, I have a client in Chile who is importing a lot of products from India. We are exporting from India to Chile, and I have been exporting to them for last 8 years. But just 3 months back, they told me that now there is a different certificate of origin which has to go to them, which is called COO, preferential business. Like now there is a preferential trade agreement which must have signed between India and Chile, wherein the importer is getting lesser duties to be paid on the items they used to pay higher in the past, which is a kind of a benefit which makes it good, favorable for us, because even if now they are looking at buying those products from China or Taiwan, they would not do that since we have a preferential trade agreement with India. And I got to know from the client, and then we applied for this kind of certificate of origin with the concerned authorities, and it is still under working. I do not have a copy yet, or I would have shown it, but I would definitely like to share that in future, because these are certain new things which are happening, and I'm sure most of the students may not be aware as they are not involved in the day-to-day working of exports at the moment. There are also chances when buyers do not accept goods delivered or services rendered to them. So it creates a lot of problem. This has happened with me. There was a client in Mexico who ordered a business, containers from us. We got an order for 5 containers. We exported it from India, and we kept informing the client about the arrival of containers in their country. Uh, There were some holidays in that country, so the containers reached the port of discharge in Mexico. In case of Mexico, there is a port called Manzanillo, which is the major port for clearing the containers. So the shipment left from Mumbai to Manzanillo, Mexico. The CHA or the concerned authorities at buyer's end were not working due to holidays. The ship stayed there for more than 15 days. We kept sending them reminders, and because of that, the demurrage started coming on the containers, which was close to $100 a day. So the client got offended when he came to know about that, and he asked us to take care of that demurrage for more than 15 days, which we clearly denied, because based on the rules and regulations and guidelines, it is on the buyer's responsibility that he has to take care of demurrages is in case there is any delay in clearing the set container. So that kind of cases will also come in front of you when you will be working in actual scenario, and rather than going by the books, you will have to amicably or smartly handle the situation so that you don't lose the business, you don't lose the money, and your client also stays with you. So we have discussed commercial risk in the previous slide, and I will quickly take you in detail, because this is one of the most common yet most important risk we should plan for when you are entering the foreign lands. It could be for many reasons, like lack of knowledge about the foreign markets. Uh, your product is not about able to adapt itself to the requirement, taste, and preferences of your client in the foreign land. I shared with you an example of mobile phone. Like the change in features are so quick in the case of mobile phones that probably what you are making in India at the moment may be an absolute kind of a feature which is not acceptable or which is very old in another country like Japan or Canada or Australia. So you will not be able to survive in that particular market. Payment terms again is very important. As I've told you, we as an exporter and importer on the other hand all think about saving themselves from the beginning. So each one proposes a payment term which is favorable for them based on their expectation experience in the past. As far as I have seen, foreign clients nowadays prefer to work on advance payment or credit. Uh, However, businesses with huge investments should be done via bank in charge, and that we mean credit, LC. So it could be a confirmed irrevocable LCs that we should work upon, so that in that case, even if your importer is trying to play smart or exporter is not really willing to serve you well, the banks in charge will make sure that the party who is correct and who is working honestly should get their payment or products in time as per the said agreements. Commercial risk can also include problems related to exchange rates, import duties, transport cost, change in foreign market characteristics. So with exchange rate I've already shared with you, like the moment Brazilian real increased, devalued, they stopped business. They did not wanted to buy from us. They only bought from us when we passed on our advantage of INR versus US dollar. So these kind of exchange rates are very much present in developing nations because of their government policies and not very stable industry. So if you are going to developing nations for business, please keep in your mind that exchange rate is an important part of your costing and business strategy. Same with import duties. As I've told you, in Brazil, it is 45%, whereas in Paraguay, which is just in front of Brazil, the duty would range from 18% to 23% for the kind of products we export from India. So you can see there is a difference of almost, double uh, uh, import duties in Brazil and Paraguay. This could be for the reason that Paraguay is a 100% import based economy. They do not manufacture anything. However, Brazil has substantial manufacturing facilities and the quality of the goods manufactured are very good. So in order to safeguard their domestic industry, they put higher import duties so that when products from foreign land enters Brazil, they become costlier than their domestic offerings. So this is also another way of stopping the foreign players to come into their land and safeguard their domestic industry. Another example of this could be seen as anti-dumping, like Argentina, in order to safeguard their tools industry, has an anti-dumping for spanners, which is a kind of a tool which is majorly manufactured in India and China and exported. So as per Argentina's anti-dumping policy, India and China both cannot sell. Yeah, they have an anti-dumping policy for spanners. So many countries take care of their domestic industry with such tariff and non-tariff barriers to safeguard their business. So we should be aware which products are valid to enter the foreign lands and which are not. Credit control, credit risk is a bigger risk. It basically happens on the part of your partner or the importer or your customer in foreign lands when he or she does not pay on time or does not pay on account of being insolvent, and that is when the exporter faces a huge loss of payment. There could be political concerns also. As I've told you, countries where the government is changing very frequently, government is not supporting imports, government who is thinking of proceeding with their own exports would not be a favorable location for you to export your products, because you are very clear that the importer's country is not going to support you and rather create troubles for you in way of many tariff and non-tariff barriers. Argentina was one of the biggest countries for business and a good partner with India and China years back. In last 5 years, I have myself seen my business dropping from millions of business to a few $1,000s now. Reason being, the president took a decision to not import, all the products in Argentina like they used to in the past. They wanted to maintain their balance of trade since they were losing the currency, their dollar reserves. They took a decision that if an importer in Argentina wants to import something from a foreign land, they would have to export something from their country to other country of more or less the similar value so that their balance of trade is matched. This is a classic example in the industry that I operate in, and gives a clear cut understanding of how political factors can affect businesses. Similar way, there are different countries with different laws that we have to understand, respect, and align ourselves. Because what happens is there are conflicts that may arise on account of various things, on account of insolvency of a customer. They may not like your quality, your shipments reaches the foreign land but are not being cleared by the importer, and they are not even letting you sell it to other customers. So in those cases, you should be well versed about the laws of the foreign countries. It is preferable to have certain people appointed as arbitrators who can really help you solve these critical problems. Currency is one thing which will keep coming throughout the presentation and also during your actual working when you will be part of these organizations, because at the end everything revolves around currency. So currency fluctuation we have discussed again in the past, it plays an important role. You have to understand it's better you choose a currency which is stable. As per my experience, most of the business that I'm doing at the moment is either in US dollar or euros, and we prefer not to export in the currencies of other countries because they are not stable and that can pose a difficult situations for us. Logistic risk, as I told you in the previous slide, is the most important part, because this is one situation when loss and risk happen the most and are not really in control of the exporter and the importer, because both of them are in their own countries, whereas the material is in transit either in the sea, ocean, or via air. So it is very important that you should be well versed about marine insurances, so that if unfortunately there are problems like leakage, explosion, fire, theft, robbery, collisions, you know how to safeguard yourself and save your money. So there are a lot of policies, money insurances that we also take for our exports in the industry based on our requirements. And you must understand different policies cover different risk, and higher the risk that you want to cover, higher the premium you will have to pay, and these are very costly insurance policies. These are not really very economical. So obviously risk will be there throughout the business transaction, from the moment you receive the purchase order till your products reaches the port of discharge. There are a lot of multiple risk on account of payment, customer insolvency, transit risk, payment risk, fluctuation risk, etc. But you cannot ignore them. You have to accept the risk. You have to avoid the ones which you think are not in line with your past experiences. Like I've told you, always look for payment terms which you are favorable with, which you think will work for you, which will not never turn back upon you. In my case, it would be advance payment or letter of credit. Try to transfer the risk to experienced people. Like I've told you, in case of legal issues, you should have an arbitrator, so that in case of any legal problems that you have, with the foreign buyer, there is an experienced person who can resolve those issues. And last but not the least, to reduce your risk on every step, make sure the products are as per the specifications of your customer. You are working with a safe customer who has a good market reputation. You are choosing banks which are European banks, which are banks who can confirm the LCs are opened, because we have seen in the past certain LCs, letter of credit, opened by African banks were not approved by European banks, and these banks were also owned by illegal entities, which led to the loss of payments. So now in the industry, we make sure that every LC has to be conferred by an American or a European bank. So these are the ways you can reduce your risk and make sure that you are playing safe. Also, if financing is needed, which is a relevant part, most of the companies need packing credit, or they need financing from banks to to receive or accept the huge orders from the importer. So for that, choose a bank who is known for that particular purpose, who offers you better interest rate, which you can even change. So you should have insurance coverages which are not really costly, but on at the same time that gives you a cover which is against most common risk and problems which is a part of international trade. You should always have a contingency plan, as I've told you. As per the law, if your shipment reaches the foreign land and within 30 days the importer is not able to clear the shipment for any reason, it could be deliberate or indeliberate, the exporter has full rights to auction the products to any other country, to any other company within the export country, to as to realize their payments. So you should always have that kind of contingency plans when you're exporting to foreign land. You should be in discussion with few other companies, so that if one customer acts insolvent or doesn't want to actually honor the order that they had discussed with you, you can contact other companies to help you. So like I've already discussed with you, buy and sell in same currency, which we normally follow. When you will see in the industry, we basically like to work in US dollars, euros, and pound for that matter. Normally we do not work, or we do not make invoices in INR to any country except the neighboring ones, like in Nepal. We make invoices in INR, and that is how we receive the payments. So talking about risk, there are many organizations in the world who are helping the companies, trades, to take care of various risks involved. And in India, one very important and well-known corporation is called ECGC, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation of India, which is the head office in Mumbai, and it comes under the Ministry of Commerce. It is a very, very, very important organization for any company who is involved in international trade or exports. I will explain you why. ECGC cover can be taken ECGC cover. The ECGC corporation finds out the background of the said customer. They check the background of this customer, their credit history, whether they are insolvent in the past or they are good payers, and they bring to your table the number. For example, if I want to export to a customer in Germany and I apply for ECGC cover, ECGC will come back to me and they will give me a brief information about this particular company, and they will tell me that Mr. Sumit, you can export an order only worth, for example, $80,000 to this particular customer, because we do not suggest you to export to a value more than $80,000. So in that case, I can export an order worth that value. And if I face a problem of customer insolvency or any other problem we have discussed in the previous slides, ECGCA is there to help me covering that cost. Now you will ask me a question, will you get 100% payment from ECGC against the cover taken? The answer would be no. There are different policies, as I have discussed, with higher and lower premiums. But what I have seen practically while working in the industry for last 13 years, any value, like my order, for example, for a 20 lakh INR 20 lakh order, if I have a ECGC cover and I apply it, the first 5 lakh rupees would be uncountable. So what I can expect is the amount of 15 lakh to be given to me against the cover that I took for this order from ECGC. And in the similar way, if you have, so order you are doing for a value less than 5 lakh, for example 4 lakh rupees, you cannot expect anything, because this is based on some calculation wherein the first 5 lakh would not be included in the refund or the cover that we get from ECGC. So as I have told you, there are multiple policies in ECGC, and while working on this presentation, I even spoke to few people who are experienced, who day to day basis work on insurance covers and ECGC covers. So I spoke to them, and they told me there are multiple companies, there are multiple policies that you can take based on your preferences and requirement and premium you would like to pay. So I have categorize them into 4 categories. Basically, these are very broad categories. Standard policies, which are for short-term credit basis. Specific policies for projects that we take, and they are done on long-term basis. A good example would be, there are a lot of Indian companies working on foreign tenders. For example, Indian construction companies working in Dubai and UAE, they are manufacturing, they are constructing a lot of railways and metro projects and roadways for them. So these kind of projects take huge time to get completed, and the payments involved also are substantial. So you cannot expect the payments to come from Dubai or any such nation to come to us in one go. They keep sending huge amount of payments in various parts. We also, include deferred payment contracts into these kind of covers. Now, deferred payment is a payment which is approved by RBI, which comes to us in a period of 180 days actually. So this can come to us in 6 months time, based on the nature of the project that we are taking care in the foreign land. Financial guarantees are issued to banks for covering various risks in extending credit at pre-shipment level. Now, once the manufacturer receives a confirmed order or business, their next project is to start manufacturing the said products and ship them. Now, most of the manufacturers has the financial capabilities, but SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, sometimes opt for financing from the banks, so that they can manufacture and ship the product, the order, to the foreign land, receive the payment and pay back to the bank. So financial guarantees extended by ECGC to certain banks who are involved in extending support to the exporters. Then there are special schemes which are meant to cover risk involved in confirmation of LCs. I just told you, nowadays it is important that when you're working through letter of credit, it should be a confirmed LC, because of the past bad experiences faced by many customers, clients and countries. So they prefer a confirmed LC, and the banks charges their fees to confirm any LC. By confirming, what they mean is that they are being a part of the process, and they are being responsible to ensure that there will be a smooth transaction. In case there is some problem or discrepancy, they will play the part and cover the risk. So apart from that, under standard policy, we again have 4 kinds of policies. So the first one is comprehensive risk. This covers commercial and political risk from the date of shipment. Please understand, it is very important that we focus on the dates. Date of shipment means when the goods were ready to be shipped from the port of loading. Like in our case, it would be Mumbai, Chennai or Kolkata, where we have ports. Any risk before the shipment would not be covered in this kind of policy, because it says that this covers commercial and political risk from the date of shipment only. However, in the next, it is politico risk, which covers political risk from the date of shipment. Only political risk will be covered, which I told you, in case there is a war or a fall of government, the risk would be covered. Now we have comprehensive risk policy. This covers commercial and political risk, but from the date of contract and not from the date of shipment. So this date of contract starts from the day the business is finalized between both the parties. So that from the date you receive the purchase order or you received your contract from the buyer, you are assured that if there is any problem, you are covered for it. You don't have to wait for the goods to be ready and to be loaded. You, from the day one, you are insured. The next policy also works on the similar line. It covers political risk from the date of contract, but the commercial risk is not covered here. So different policies, different kind of premiums. So we have discussed in the previous slide, there are commercial risk and political risk covered. Now, what are these commercial and political risks? Let's see a little detail on them. Commercial risk involved insolvency of the buyer, which we have already discussed. Buyer is not paying you for one or the other reasons. Protracted default in payment. Protracted default in payments are the ones where the buyer has to make the payment in a period of 120 days, which is 4 months. In any circumstances, else this policy will cover you. Then there are special circumstances where buyers is failure to accept the goods, uh, though there is no fault on the part of exporter. This could be, like I told you, the buyer uh, does not have relevant funds, or there are certain changes in the demand for a particular product, and buyer is not really sure he will be able to sell this particular product in their country, so he may choose not to accept the product and they don't want to pay you. So these kind of covers, standard policies will cover that. Now political risk includes, on broader lines, problems or discrepancies at the government level. When you talk about government, there are a lot of policies that government laid down for you to work for importers and exporters to work together. And due to wars, due to fall of a government, due to overnight change in a policy by government, the importer or the exporter can really be affected badly. One example of that could be, uh, you choose to export or you choose to manufacture in a foreign land. So an Indian company, let's say Tata Steel, develops a manufacturing facility in Dubai and they want to manufacture X product in Dubai. Now, due to a problem, the government of Dubai passes a law that when Tata wants to go back to their country, wants to shut down their manufacturing, they cannot take the material or the payments or the income earned from that manufacturing plant back to their country. So these are laws which are not known to the manufacturer and has to be abide by, because you are in a foreign land. So you have to be prepared for such risks. There could be a chance where there is a cancellation of valid export license or import license. This could happen on account of your background, or if you are importing certain products which are prohibited. So you have to ensure that if you're doing something like that, you are at a higher risk and you should definitely take covers if they are applicable for that particular product or service. So we discussed what the standard policies include. Now we should know standard policies do not cover following risks. So there are disputes based on quality. Like what we do actually in industry is, whenever we are developing a business with a new customer, I personally prefer to send a sample of my product or a service so that the customer at the other end can have a look at that product, test it well from all kind of specifications. He is satisfied with the sample, and then only we prefer to receive the order and send the actual shipment, so that when the actual order reaches the customer, they do not hold us on account of quality. Yeah. So quality is one thing which will never cover the you, because that depends upon your product and that depends upon the taste and preferences of your importer. Nature of goods, like I told you, is again a problem. You never know the product that you are shipping today and reaches another country next 3 months. Would it be in demand? Would it be preferred? Would have a business in that particular country? In case of garments, probably the season may have passed or the fashion may have become an old, so you may not be able to sell that product. So this could be another risk which is not accounted. Buyers failure to obtain import license. Just like export license is important to export, import license is also very important. In case your buyer fails to get a valid import license or their license has been cancelled, this is not included in these policies because these are factors outside the coverage. Insolvency or default of an agent of the exporter. Now, this is important in foreign lands when we work. There are times when you are not directly working with the importer. Sometimes some big companies or medium companies who do not have the know-how of the international business or imports, they hire experienced agents in their country. For example, if I'm shipping my goods from India to New Zealand, a company in New Zealand does not know, they have never imported, this is the first time they are doing it, they may hire an agent on their behalf who will import the goods, clear it at the custom and further sell it to their client, to the importer who will sell my products in New Zealand. So there could be a chance that this agent of the importer is insolvent or he's not able to pay or does not have the necessary papers in line to import my goods and can lead to a problem. So this is also not covered in the standard policy. The last one would be exchange fluctuations. As I've told you, exchange fluctuations cannot be determined by anybody because fluctuation takes place every day. All you can do is you can study the past trends of any currency, but you cannot be 100% sure of how the currency would behave in times to come. So this is also not included in the standard policy. So just like ECGC that saves us from various risk on account of customer insolvency, etc. We also take marine insurance policy in order to prevent ourselves from various problems that can take place during the transit. By transit, I mean when your products are in the route on water, in sea, or in the air in case of air shipments. So there are broadly three kind of policies. We call them Institute Cargo Clause A, B, C. The one covers the widest problems that may happen during the transit. Second one covers a little less than the clause A, and third one has lowest premium and lowest risk coverage as well. So these risks can be of many kinds. It could be God-made or man-made. Probably there could be there could be a breakage, there could be a spillage, there could be accident of a container in the sea. A container or ship can stop working in the middle of the sea, which can delay the shipment. A lot of things can happen. Also, it could be man-made in case of accidents or a fire or spillage of water on the products which are being transported. So many external and internal factors which can lead to problem during transit, and we called all these problems perils in maritime terminology. So there could also be strikes, there could all be wars between two countries. From the country the material is being exported and towards the country it is going. There could be a theft, robbery by another country who can take away your shipment between the sea and it does not reaches at a defined location. So you cannot predict such things. It is very important to know that what are the risks and how to cover them, but it is also important to know what risks are not covered so that you know the implication of the risk that you are taking and how big it would be, so that you can have a contingency plans to manage it when they actually happen. So insurance contracts specially excluded losses due to leakage or in case of goods packed in bags may be excluded by the insurance contract itself. uh, it is very important that we pack the goods in transit by keeping in mind the nature of the product. Specifically in the industry, when I work, I make sure that any material, like anything which is made of iron, or for that purpose, which are mechanical products, which can get rust during the transit because of the moisture present in the container, we try to pack them very well. We try to use silicone tablets, which are very much used nowadays, to keep moisture at bay, so that when the actual product reaches the buyer's end, there is no corrosion happening. Because if corrosion happens, my product is not really prepared to be sold in the market. So you have to make sure the packaging is done very well, and the nature of the product. For example, here I'm talking about solidification of palm and coconut oil. So there are kind of coconuts which are exported in open containers, but due to moisture and temperature in the transit, they may lose their moisture and the oil may get spilled, so which is not really acceptable to the importer's country, and your shipment can be cancelled. So you have to ensure these factors. Delayed arrival, as I have told you, shipment reaching late because of any factor also is not covered, because it could be on account of the captains of the ship, it could be on account of the how old your ship is, or because of the conditions of the ship, because of the waters, there could be high tides, so you have to slow the speed of your shipment. That is why it is not included in the risk. Violence like wars, riots, civil wars, nobody is aware when this will happen, so of course this is really not covered in the policy. Most important, carrying products which are not approved by the government, like drugs, are never covered in these policies. So you have to understand that the restrictions are very strict. From India or in foreign lands, the customs are appointed to ensure that the products which are coming into their countries are not in any way harmful to their people or to their country. So involving into these kind of exports would definitely means a lot of loss on the part of exporter or importer in that case. So, like I told you, it's important to know about risk and types of losses that can incur. So here I have broadly shared few categories, like marine losses can be divided into total loss and partial loss. And then they are further divided into actual loss, constructive loss, general average loss, and particular loss. So what is the total loss or partial loss? The total loss is one wherein the products are damaged in such a way that you cannot recover them. A classic example would be a shipment of cement, which mixed with water will become a concrete, and it would be of no use no matter whatever you do to bring back that product to their normal conditions. So there you lose complete value. Also, this is very common that ships get ships sink in the waters because of any reasons, and the material that goes with them are taken out after a huge interval of time, because it's not very safe to go and bring that material. So by the time the material is inside in the water, you can understand it is completely damaged and not used or fit for any particular use in the commercial market. Constructive loss is one wherein the cost of bringing that product which is damaged to its novel self has a cost more than its normal cost. So like the product is damaged, you want to bring it back to normal self, but doing that will cost you more than the new product itself. So that is a constructive loss. Average partial loss, it basically happens intentionally. So it is a kind of a intentional sacrifice that you have to take in order to safeguard the ship or the material on your on your ship that you are taking towards foreign lands. So it may be a case where you pour water to extinguish fire that has taken place in during the transit period, or probably your ship is not moving ahead on account of mechanical problems, so you take help from some other nearby ship and you pay them, or you have to throw some goods from your ship into the water to bring back the weight as per the allowed weight to sail properly in the waters. So these are you know risks, or these are losses which are deliberate but done for the safeguard or for the benefit of all other owners of the ship and the goods. However, the last one, particular average loss, is an accidental one. It may happen that because one of the containers was damaged, there were holes, nobody noticed it, and during the transit, the water got spilled on the material, or maybe spilled by any staff on the ship while transiting. So this could be a problem, or this could be a loss which can happen, which is man-made mostly, and which cannot be thought of before, or which is not deliberate, as in the case of the previous slide. And the cost of particular average loss can be insured. So here, we come up with the presentation, although I have few more experiences to share, but we can do that once you are through with your queries if you want.
So that actually was a very insightful presentation, Mr. Sumit, and we have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Just, yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, very much. So let us talk about the questions first, and then probably quickly I will share few 4-5 very important experiences of my own, which are very important for every student to know here, that will prepare them in times to come when they will be a part of professional organizations.
Right. So there's a question by Mr. Sayam Sondi. He's a student of MBA International Business. So he wants to know that, when the Brexit happened, there was a lot of fluctuation in the euro value. So how companies manage those currency risk?
See, it's a very good question. As I've told you, currency fluctuation is a major trouble. Since we are in the industry, I have already working with a lot of companies from India for their exports. So at that moment, our business was badly affected. Uh, uh, that was the major thing that happened with most of the companies who were involved in Brexit. So I've told you, in fluctuations cannot be handled or cannot be insured, because you never know. Just like freight cost, currency fluctuations happens every day. You can only have an idea about it if you are following the trends of the fluctuation, but you cannot 100% define them. So one thing that we did, I'll share with you, or I think most of the smart companies must have done, is we did hedging of our currencies, so that even in the case of fluctuations, we would get returns, or we would get realizations as per the hedging done with our banks. So if, for example, we did it for the US, US dollars also, like even though the currency was 74, 75 at that time, we had hedged our currency at 72, because we were thinking that, of course, at the moment the currency is 76, which is very good for an exporter, but probably a time would come where the currency may fall flat and go beyond 65, 64, or 63. So I wanted to prepare myself for risk that may come rather than the benefit we were incurring. So I think most of the company at that time did hedging. Most of the companies have experts who are involved in day-to-day trend study of the currency fluctuations, to keep the risk at a minimum, since you cannot completely avoid it.
Sir, thank you, sir, for
so I think, Saim, can you also come on a camera for a while? And I think I should not be standing between you and the students, so I would like Mahima to ask a question next.
Sure.
Mahima?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. It was a very, very insightful presentation. And, we say that learning from the books or even from the internet is one thing, but then learning from experience, that's another. And that's the way to go. So I have I have two questions. So the first question is, how can Indian startups compete with China, as we can see that China has so strategically place themselves that no matter like which company that we see, most of the companies either are from China or have their manufacturing units in China. So this was the first question, and the second question is, what are the things that we can actually learn from China and adopt? Because since you have a very vast pool of knowledge and experience, so I would really like if you can throw some light on these questions. Thank you.
Very nice question. I think in this one question, you have tried to capture everything on how to be a successful exporter from India. Well, to start with, let's talk about the strength of China. So that's what we have to learn primarily. So the entrepreneurship, the way every person or every company in China is prepared for entrepreneurship is way more than in India. I have personally seen this because last year in April, I was in China to be a part of their biggest exhibition called Canton Fair. I don't know how many of you are aware of it. So I was there participating. I had my own booth with my team, and I could see, there was small number of companies with small offices having machines, and they were so enthusiastic about manufacturing and supplying to overseas nations. Their staff are dedicated. I think the country's policies are also very favorable. That is the reason people are trying to be entrepreneurs and not employees. That is one thing that we should really learn from them. A real life scenario that I'll share with you is one of my friend who used to work with me. Then he turned as an exporter from India, and now he is exporting from India. He is on a verge of closing his business. Reason being, he is totally unhappy with the way our customs in India, specifically in New Delhi, treats the small and medium enterprises. I'm not talking about big companies like Tata Steel or Reliance. I'm talking about small and medium enterprise. Since you asked me how can the new age companies can get into this trade, so the amount of troubles that you face in terms of documentation, unnecessary documentation, bribery, I would say, the attitude they have and lack of seriousness, a huge number of substantial number of exporters are taking back steps. So what we need to learn here is, it's not just about the entrepreneurs, but the government as a whole has to come into the picture. They have to understand that until and unless they create a favorable grounds for the new age companies to come into the picture, the companies will not be able to do exactly what China has done today. You all are aware China was also a poor country. Few years back, they also had people without food, and majority of the nation, country, people were below poverty line. Today they are manufacturing Apple phones, Boeing flights. Any and every product has a saying it's made in China. So you can understand it's very important that government and corporate has to come together. They have to create guidelines. They have to create a favorable environment so that we can go and do similar miracles like China did, which I think is happening now, considering the biggest factory Samsung is going to open in India, in Greater Noida, that was inaugurated last year by Mr. Prime Minister Modi. So that is important. Another thing that I would say is that it's very important that it's important that you should be prepared from the start. Like, you students are prepared. You have done 2 years of education. Unlike me, I was a marketing student. So if you say, you are better prepared. Also, when you interact with people like me and your professor and other people from the industry, you get to know the actual problems and actual way of working that happens. Then you can club your knowledge, which comes from the books, and from the practical experiences. It prepares you much more than it prepared me or any other person in the industry. So it gives you a competitive edge, and you will not do silly mistakes that I did in my case. Like, I did not know how to greet a person in Latin America. I was shaking hands. I had to peck on her cheek. So that I learned from experience. You should not do that mistake, and learn from what I shared with you will always keep you in a better picture. So learning from people from the industry is a way to move it forward.
Thank you so much, sir, for
You're
answering
welcome.
the question in detail, and we would like to have you further also. All of the students are really, we have learned a lot from you. Thank you so much.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Kasha, can you ask a question? After that, Surya, will come to you. Kasha.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Ukasha. We
Yeah,
can hear
hi.
you.
So my question is, in this time there are so many scams that and people make fake certificates.
Can you be a little louder? It's not really clear.
Sir, sir, in this time there are
Yeah,
so many companies that are making fake certificates,
right.
and due to which we cannot identify whether the company is genuine or not. So how can we save ourselves from that?
Uh, I would say, see, generally, as per my experience, I have not come across any company who are making fake certificates, because there are many checks that has to take place, especially in international trade. For example, nowadays any company that I approach to start business with, they ask me to send them few certificates like ISO certificate, that I am a company who's working as per the ISO guidelines. They are asking me certificates like OSAS, which is OHSAS. It is for organizational hazards, like I am manufacturing in an environment which is favorable for the people who are working there and also for the environment. Then there are specific certificates for industry, like for automotive you have to have a TS certificate, which talks about your experience and expertise when you are entering a automotive industry. Same in the case of FMCG. So these certificates are issued by certain governments, certain governing bodies, sorry, like there is a body called SGS. I don't know how much of you have heard about it. SGS is a very well known organization nowadays for most of the countries. They come to your manufacturing facility, they audit your order, they issue you a certificate with an expiry date, and until unless the certificate is submitted by you to the client and by your client in their customs in the foreign land, your shipment will not be cleared. So I really don't think there is a possibility that you can make a certificate and the shipment will clear, because it would not happen that way. Normally it doesn't happen. So if you have faced this, please do let me know, any particular company that you have seen or a product that they are exporting, then only I'll be able to realize, because in thankfully in last 3 years I have not been able to see such kind of problems.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe he might be referring to that particular case wherein fake shipping bills were being generated and a lot of drawbacks were being claimed by the exporter from the customs department.
See, that had happened a lot in the past, but just like I've told you, a lot has changed now. Past, what used to happen is lot of data entries were done manually, but now most of the customs are working on SAP software. These are special softwares which are integrated by various customs within the India, and they are being looked upon by many authorities and not just by being mentioned in a register. So you can understand someone writing something in a register in a corner of a custom zone, and someone entering that into a software which is being seen by a lot of authorities officials now, has different implications. What has happened in the past has happened because of probably we were not prepared for that kind of export, and then that is why you will see that in the past and now the increase in exports from India is much more substantial than in the past. These are the reasons more companies, more countries from outside are coming to India, then going to China, Taiwan, or other countries, because we have really worked upon our ways of working in the international trade.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
very rightly said, and that is why after the Nirav Modi scam, RBI also have issued a lot of guidelines to ensure that such things should not be repeated again.
True, true.
Yeah, Surya, you also had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
You're
Yeah, very.
audible.
Yes. Sir, it was really insightful about the international trade risks, which actually attracted me more. So I just wanted to ask, in this present times of COVID, and with increasing issues of trades being closed and trade deals being closed, and all these restriction implications as well that we have if we import something from other country, how important do you feel that in this country, I mean, self production and self trade is how do you see that self trade as a key than international trade coming into us?
Do you let me rephrase your question? Are you trying to say that because of COVID, there were ban on export from India on many products, and you're asking
Even
like
imports.
even on imports because of precautionary measures? So during that time, you are talking about self-reliance on our own domestic market.
Yes, sir.
Very good
Self-trade.
question. Yeah, it's very
And
good question.
not only on COVID situation, but also all these excise duties and custom duties can be levied. Na? If we see
Yes,
even the crude prices and crude trade as well, in last 1 year, it has been reduced to drastic changes. Like it has been fall
exactly.
down. Yeah.
Exactly. It has been at its lowest, I would say. It was,
Yes.
it has fallen down. So very rightly said. See, during COVID problem, a lot of things came up. A lot of changes came up. I would not say they were problem. Rather, I call them opportunities. Uh, During COVID, when the goods from outside India were not allowed to come inside, or they were very much restricted, although some products were coming, which were related to personal protection equipments. Apart from that, most of the products were not coming, and we were not even able to export because my company also faced a lot of problem. I had huge orders for masks being made in India for various countries. The prices were finalized, products were liked, but the authorities were not allowed masks to leave the country. So in that scenario, there was, a lot of opportunities for us to again fall back and focus upon our own country, because the domestic need was also huge at that time. And I don't know how much you are aware about that. When the COVID just started, many of the manufacturers who were into mask now were not there. They were small manufacturers who were into garment trade, who were making similar products, stopped their principal product overnight and started making masks because they saw it as a huge opportunity. With a market like a population of 1.2 billion people, and you are asking for masks, so people who were not even making this as a principal product stopped their principal product and manufactured masks and started selling at a whooping prices. Just for example, this may not go with your actual question, but I just want to share. Mask, a 3-ply mask, which was at a cost of 80 paisa or 1 rupees before COVID, was being sold by my own company. I bought it from a company manufacturer and was sold to me at a price of 9 rupees. Can you believe that? So 1 rupee mask was sold to me at 9 rupees, as we work with an NGO also. So we had to supply it for the children. So we bought from them and then we supplied it to them, which was a huge cost for us, because in the past, we had kept this cost on the basis of 1 rupee as per the market rate of that mask. Now we were paying 9 times more for that. So a lot of companies made money, they took advantage of that, and they focused only on these products and left their principal product. Uh, Also, when the restrictions were taken off, there was huge demand for these products from India as well. So since COVID was a problem in China first and not in India, most of the customers did not wanted this product from China but from India. So these small time or medium manufacturers of masks were exporting to huge orders outside India after the restriction, because people did not wanted to work with China because of the bad experience they had because of COVID, because breakthrough happened in China first. So they had a mentality that we don't want China to save us from COVID. We want India, which is the next stop shop for huge manufacturing after China. So, I would say that it was a problematic situation because nothing was getting imported or exported. A loss was obviously happening because any hindrance in international trade affects countries. But on the other side, take it as an opportunity. Many of our new suppliers came up, many new manufacturers came up who were not exporting before and got huge orders and now exporting to foreign countries. So based on problems and conditions, you have to see how you have to play it as per your strengths, and how you take your advantage of that particular scenario. That's very important.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Even though we agreed that we'll have two sessions from 11:15 to 1:10, and I actually can see that it's currently 1:15 right now. So I really don't know how many more questions you'll be able to take, because I can see questions pouring in now.
Please keep asking me. Let's try to do as much as possible.
Right. So Saad, I can see you also have raised your hand. So would you like to go ahead with the question?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you switch your
Sir,
camera if possible, Saad?
okay, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, it's not working, I think so.
It's
It's a
okay. Fine,
technical
fine,
issue
fine.
right now.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Saad.
So, sir, I have a question. It is little much different from uh, what you have talked, which you have taught. Sir, I just want to ask that if a person wants to enter in the international business and it does not have, the person do not have any kind of experience, so
Yeah.
what are the initial steps he wants to take? He have to take to enter into the international business.
So in that case, you can straight away come to a person like me. Jokes
That
apart.
is what I was about
Yeah.
to say. You have a
Yeah,
live
because
example in
Yes.
front of you.
yes, because I'm myself working my company now. After all these experiences, working with a lot of companies. Now I have my own company where I'm working with a lot of Indian manufacturers as their authorized export consultant and developing business for them. However, in as per your question, it's very important. See, you should have a basic understanding of what kind of industry you are entering into. You have already taken the first right step to be at MIT and doing this 2 years course. So I think the first step has already been taken by you. The next important steps would be to gather information apart from what you're getting from your professors and from classes, because for them also there is a time constraint. They cannot pass on all the information in a class ranging for 45 minutes or an hour, because that was the problem with me also. So how much passionate you are, how much dedicated you are for your future into this trade is very important. I'll tell you, the moment I landed up in my first job with Canon India Private Limited, unlike all my batchmates, I would say most of the batchmates, I was confusion free. I told myself I want to be in international trade and I will do this till the end of my professional career. So if you are that sure, you start working for it. I, for example, learned Spanish language from Spanish Cultural Center, learned Spanish, and by traveling to these countries, now I speak fluent Spanish. I learned Italian language from Italian Embassy New Delhi, did 2 years course on weekends. Now I speak Italian. In this Corona time, I did a course on French basic language. Why am I doing all that even after experience in this industry? Because I still cannot consider myself as an experienced person. I'm again telling you, I am more like you guys. I'm again a student. Like, I may have a little bit experience more than you people, but considering the dynamic international trade, which is changing and so much is coming new, I am not an expert, and I think no one can be. So you should be a constant learner. Try to learn from people. Try to learn from the technology like Google you have. You put whatever you doubt you have in your mind, and the answer is in front of you. So you have to prepare yourself for that particular environment, like I did. Try to learn basic of some foreign languages. Try to get answers for questions that troubles you. Try to get connect with people like me or people who are from industry who can really tell you whether this industry is for you or not, what kind of division you should enter, if you will enter, what kind of growth can you expect and in how many years. So you have to prepare yourself 360-degree. You cannot get everything in one simple book that prepares you in 2 years to just go into the industry. Because remember, just like my product competes, like goes from India and competes with products from China, Taiwan, US, Germany, you are also a product. And when you go for a job, you are going to compete with products of different manufacturers, bracket universities and college. So you are from MIT, you have 10 students from 10 universities. So you have to be prepared, and you have to perform in such a way that you are always at the top. So prepare yourself from day one. And after, yeah, I think with this course, do other things also, so that you don't fall flat in times to come. I hope I have answered your question well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So we'll take one last question from
Sure.
Shivani now.
Very good afternoon, sir. It was a very insightful session. So my question to you is that we have seen China as a very good and influencing IT industry, and
Right.
India in textile and chemical industry. But now India with vocal factor is changing the business strategy. What India wants to do, wants to replace China in IT and technology related industry,
Yeah.
including the automobile sector. So how Indian startups, IT startup can increase the brand image and sales in overseas business? Would it be easy for another Western countries to accept this and adopt this?
Good afternoon, Shivani. It's a nice question. So, as far as information technology, automotive, these industries are concerned, I think India has already been performing in these industries from many, many years. The example in that direction would be seen in case of Infosys or TCS or Capgemini or Datamatics India. These are very well known global companies nowadays catering to global clients who have chosen India apart from China to work with. Also, in case of automotive industry, there are names which are not just restricted to India. For example, Tata, which is being sold in more than 100 countries. Mahindra, which is one of the first Indian companies to get approval in the US market for their SUVs. In the motorcycle section, the Hero is there. TVS is there, Bajaj is there, which is hugely popular in Latin America. Let me share with you. I have myself seen Bajaj, TVS, and Hero showrooms being opened in front of me in many Latin American countries like Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. Lot of big assemblers are joining hands with TVS in Argentina, in Brazil, wherein they will be importing huge number of two-wheelers from India in CKD form, which is complete knockdown forms. They will assemble it in their own country, save taxes, generate employment, and sell this brand in their own country. So you see a lot is happening in terms of IT or in terms of automotive industry. It is not that we are zero. We are already doing a lot. And when you travel to these countries, you get to know people feedback about these products. So I have worked with automotive industry during my stint with Eastman Group because I was selling motorcycles and spare parts from India and China both. So I had the opportunity to cater both kind of customers. With China, of course, there's a price benefit, but there has been quality issues which are not acceptable in transport or automotive because they are directly related to human life. However, Indian two-wheelers and cars are much appreciated. In Africa, at the moment, there is a company called Sonalika International, which is a very nice, a very well-known tractor manufacturer from India. They have a brand called Solis, which is recently introduced 6 months back. It's doing fabulously well. It's number one in Africa. Africa is a price sensitive market, please understand. Still, they are buying from India, not from China. It's not that China doesn't have tractor manufacturing companies. Still, they are coming to India for certain reasons. So, coming back to the point, TCS also has offices in Latin America. One such office that I have seen myself is in a very small country called Uruguay. It's a country in Latin America with a population of 3 million people. But the people looks up to this company because they are generating employment for those people and they are doing wonders for their country. So I think we are very well doing going well in this direction, keeping IT and automotive in mind. I know China has been there and has been doing very well for all these years, but then they have a benefit of doubt of all these years as well. We started a little late, but I'm sure the way we are proceeding, we will definitely reach and probably surpass them in times to come.
Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
sir. Hope the tech startups are able to replace the from India.
Sure, I hope so the same.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was
You're
a
welcome. You're
wonderful
welcome.
session, and the way you answered it's very well portrayed. Thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome. I'm glad I could make you guys relate to the actual happenings that happen in our industry on day-to-day basis. So on the similar lines, I had noted down 3 or 4 most important experiences. Only if the time allow and if Alka ma'am allows, I would like to share with you because I think without that, the presentation may not be complete.
Definitely, we would like to share your personal experiences because that actually has made the entire presentation so enriching.
True. So I'll quickly take these examples. If you have any doubt, please stop me there and then so that I'll be able to clarify it. But these are personal expenses, so I don't think you will have any troubles understanding it. So like I have spoken to you, there are different kind of customers in the market, and we are taught by the books to go with a buyer who's the best for you, who is, you know, financially sound, who works as per your payment terms. But unfortunately that never happens. You know, you don't get the picture perfect customer who's paying you on time, who's not unhappy about your product, who never cries for the quality. It all happens. That's the fact of the industry. I have faced one such customer. I have been following that customer since last 7 years. This is a company called Western Tools in Mexico. I have visited this customer 6 times in these last 7 years. I have met him in exhibitions. I have traveled to Mexico 5 times. There, I have done everything to, you know, give them the best impression possible, given them references of the biggest companies I work in Mexico and the US so that he gets attracted and start working with me. Nothing happened. And guess when the order came? The business happened during Corona, when I was expecting nothing from even the biggest of the customers. So, you know, the uncertainties here in this market is such that you cannot predict anything. My company was surprised of how this customer who was never working with me in these last 7 years, when everything was fine and I was sitting in front of me, and he chose the time of COVID when I was not expecting anything from him. The order worth is not much. It's $80,000. So uncertainty. Another uncertainty is, I was told by one of my contacts in the market that you should be really safe with this customer, this importer, as he troubles other suppliers from China and India for payments. So I knew that he will trouble us for the payments. So we asked for more advance. Normally we work like 30% advance and 70% on the copy of BL. What I mean is advance is 30%, 70% when the goods are physically moved from the port, and I have a BL, the bill of lading, to share with the customer as a proof, and they send us 70% payment. In this case, I increased the payment to 50% because I knew that he is somebody who's not have enjoying a good industry expert reputation. So this customer, I think, understood that we are playing smart. So he took 45 days to send the first advance payment. He kept saying, I'll arrange. And after 45 days, when the payment come, then only we considered the order, as confirmed. And then only we started manufacturing. Although he kept requesting that you please start production, I will send the money. But I did not do that. So this is a classic example of your market expertise. You should be connected in the market. You should keep gathering information which is not available on any government site, any custom sites, or no book will tell you about this customer. You have to develop your understanding about the market so that you can predict a risk and play accordingly. So this was a very good example that happened recently with us, and we are very happy to get this customer on board after 7 years of hard work. So another example, biggest company in Canada called Canada Tire Company. Just like Walmart and Lowe's, these are huge departmental stores. Canadian Tire Company is a huge company in Canada. They have many departmental stores and they sell anything and everything. This company came to us years back. This is this is a time when I just started working. So they came to us for a business, and considering that they were a huge brand, we were very excited and very, enthusiastic that we want to get this customer on board. So we accepted the order, and we extended credit to them instead of advance payment because we thought it's such a good company, they will never default. Unfortunately, this company did the biggest default in the history of our company. They never paid us, and we were so sure about their brand and their presence in the market. We never took ECGC cover, and that particular experience taught us that till date, every shipment or for every customer, we take an ECGC cover. So, not all mistakes are costly. They teaches you to prepare for bigger risk that you are going to take in the times to come.
So the company had to bear the loss in this case.
Yes, our company had to bear the loss because we had, one, no ECGC cover, two, we had extended credit, so they accepted the goods and they never paid back. Although we did a complaint in the Canadian embassy, we gave a letter, but then it is such a big company. The Canadian embassy came back to us and they asked us, why didn't you apply for the covers? But we were so interested and enthusiastic, we forgot to go by the papers and we just went ahead with our excitement and, you know, the success factor that we had achieved. So that also happens sometimes, especially with newcomers who are a part of the industry. When the management is expecting so much from you, if you get such a big account, you think that you have done your best, now everything is going to be good. Please understand, everything is going to be good only when the cycle is complete, the customer has the product or your service, you have your full payment, the customer is happy with your offering and he's continuing to do business with you. That is only the time to celebrate, as per my, you know, experience all these years. Because the cycle is a very long term and any point, any risk can jeopardize the complete, you know, cycle. So one such another example. Yeah.
Mr. Sumit, I also would like to one question. Like you said that you normally go in for ECGC cover for each and every transaction that you have
Yes. Yes.
since the Canadian thing happened. So how much money normally you have to spend in taking a cover vis-a-vis the revenue you'll be getting from that contract?
Ma'am, as I had shared with you in the previous slides, actually there are different policies based on different requirement, based on different premium amount that you are willing to pay, and they are very costly. So I am not really aware, or I'm not allowed to share the amount of a particular policy, but I can tell you about a policy which we recently took. This is another topic which I wanted to share, but I'll share with the same question, which is very important for everybody to understand, and it's related to my personal experience. Due to the technological advancement, what is happening, cyber crimes are increasing a lot, and these problems are happening with the payments that you know, you have to get from your buyers. I had to receive a payment from a client in Brazil. Somebody made an email, you know, on my name with an extra, like it's Sumit Khanna with double N, made a triple N into that, and somehow hacked our system and sent a mail to the customer with the change bank details. The customer or the other side of the world thought it's Sumit Khanna. He did not even notice, even I couldn't notice the first time I looked at the email, that it wasn't me, it was somebody else with a triple N and not the double N. Customer unfortunately transferred the payment to them, and after 1 week of waiting, I was worried why the payment is not coming to me. I asked the customer, he sent me the swift copy, the copy that shows the payment has been transferred. It clearly showed that it was not my bank account, it was a bank account in China. So this is something which is happening every day, and this is happening irrespective of the fact that our company, well, this company which whom I was working, like Gross Tools in India, which is the leading manufacturer of tools, they have all systems in place. They have more than 10 people who are looking after IT, software, and everything. Still, this happened. So what we have done here is Gross Tools have taken a policy recently. We have taken a coverage of 2.5 crores for a complete year for all my customers, so that if in a given period I face a loss of payment on account of cyber theft up till 2.5 crore, I will get a cover. And for that particular cover, I have paid an amount of INR 1.50 lakhs. So you can imagine what kind of an amount I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, all this costing has to be a part of your pricing, because you cannot put this from your pocket. So if you have these pricing in place, you are aware about such policies, your prices will never be wrong. You will realize right returns for your product and service. Otherwise, a chance would be wherein when you get your returns, half of the money is going for such policies or such losses, and you would not be able to proceed further. Yeah.
Yes, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So another thing that happened with one of my fellow, there's a company called Stone Age India. They are based in Jaipur. They are leading exporters of stones and tiles and ceramics from India, which is a huge industry from India nowadays. There are major players like Kajaria, Johnson, and a lot of them, but this is a SME based in Jaipur. What they do is they own few mines from where they get the raw material. They cut the big stones into smaller parts and they export it to various markets, especially in Europe, London, USA, wherein these stones are used to decorate the houses and hotels. So these are used on huge volumes. One such problem happened is we received an order from Singapore for 15 containers. We sent a sample to the customer of a stone, which they approved. On the basis of that stone, since it's a natural product, we do not make the stone. We just take it out from the mines and we clean it and we polish it and cut it and send it as it is because it's a natural product. So there could be a chance that one of the stone that we sent as a sample would not match 100% with the other stones coming from that mine, which is very understood. So the sample was approved, and out of the order of 15 containers, we sent 5 containers first. 5 were in manufacturing and 5 were in planning. So as soon as the customer received 5 containers, he said the shipment is not matching the sample, right? So he said, I will not buy rest 10 containers from you. So we told them that it was against the sample that you approved and this is a natural product. The product may not match totally. So he did not understand it. He said, this does not happen in Singapore. We want similar, do whatever it is, but we want either same product or we cancel it. So they only accepted 5 containers. The rest 10, out of which 5 were already ready for the next shipment and 5 in production, got rejected. That was a huge loss for us. Why? Because we had done customization. We had cut them in the sizes they wanted, which is not accepted to other customers. So this is also an unforeseen problem that happened, irrespective of the fact we used a sample. But then again, there's a problem on account of a different customer from a different country. So this is also a part of the everyday, exports game that happens. However, a similar thing happened with a client in Switzerland. Since I told you we take out the raw material from the mines and we cut them and export it, during rains in Jaipur last year, the mines got filled with rainwater, and this customer has given us the order only on one, promise or assurance that we will ship this goods in next 2 months because they had to supply it to the government in Switzerland. So we approved because we were not aware that rains will happen. As soon as the rains happened, the mines were filled of water. When the mines are filled, it's very dangerous to work in them. So we had to wait. Once the water went out, they were dried, then only we could take out the raw material and start manufacturing and ship the goods. This took more than 6 months, and since this was a natural cause, we explained it to the Switzerland customer. We sent them the pictures of the mines along with the news channels, reflecting this on the TV channels. They understood it, they supported us, and they said, since it's mother earth and these are natural calamities, this is beyond your problem. Not a problem, we will support you and you can send it as and when possible. So you see 2 situations, 2 different countries, 2 different customers, how handling the situation. So you cannot read it about anywhere in a book. It happens on a day-to-day basis, and you have to collect this experience. So the next time when you work with a Singaporean customer or a Switzerland customer, you know their tolerance level, you know how to handle them, So that is also very important. I think examples are many, but I think these are the few important ones that I really wanted to share with you all to keep you, at bay with ongoing day-to-day challenges that we face in the industry, and we were never aware of that, when we started working about it. So yeah, the experiences teaches you the best after your books in the schools and colleges. Any question if you have, please let me know.
I think we do not have any questions. You have made the presentation in such a simple way, and by adding your own personal experiences, I think it sounded even more simpler. So at this point of time, we would like to thank you for such a wonderful, insightful presentation, and also sharing your own personal experience, which actually made the session more interesting for the students. We definitely would like to, attach few students with you so that they can also help you in your operations to whichever extent is possible, and they also will get will actually gain from the work that you are doing. So
Right.
we will get back to you with the CVs of our students who definitely would be interested in this particular task. So we'll close the session now.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll close the session now, and Sani sir, if you are there. Sani sir.
Yes, I'm there. I'll come back.
So we can continue with that. We can continue with the discussion, Sani sir.
Yes. I'll be speaking with him. आपका
So
लिंक
thank
जो है ना
you.
मेरे लैपटॉप खुल रहा है, तो आई एम ऑन माय मोबाइल.
Right, sir.
So I would like to thank all the students for their time and attention and all the wonderful questions they have asked. Trust me, such sessions not just prepare you for the future, but trust me also. And it's a exchange of knowledge and information. So I would be glad to do this in future as well. And I hope I would have been able to add some amount of knowledge by the simple experiences that I shared with you all. And that will be helpful to you when you will join the industry in your professional careers. So good luck from my side. Have a great day. Thank you.